Toyota Kirloskar motor has had a dominating say in the large SUV space, courtesy the continuing success of the Fortuner. But in segments lower down, the company either doesn't exist or its offerings have hardly made a mark. But now, the mid SUV space is all set to get even more exciting with Toyota's product right here. This is the Urban Cruiser HyRyder from the Japanese brand, co-developed with Suzuki Motor. The biggest claim to fame for this SUV is that it is the only one of two mid-size SUVs to offer strong hybrid technology, the other being its brother from another mother, Maruti Suzuki Grand Vitara. But today we are focusing on the HyRyder, its looks, its features, the space on inside, and of course the most important factor, the drive itself. You're watching HT Auto. I'm your host, Shubhadeep. The HyRyder is one of the sportiest looking Toyota models that you'll find on the Indian roads, and it's not just unique and distinct in the Toyota camp, but in its segment as well. Largely thanks to very sleek LED headlight units on either side and very sleek DRLs as well, which interestingly double up as turn indicators. The nose does not have any perforations and is one stretched out integrated body panel that's very common now in design language of electric and hybrid vehicles. It does have these chrome lines on either side which come and meet the Toyota logo in the middle. There are fog lights of course on either side, placed relatively high up, and get the chrome underline treatment here. The best part though is that all the sporty face features and characteristics are also accentuated by a muscular front bumper which is quite wide and quite pronounced. Chances are that when you see a HyRyder approaching in the rear view mirror, you'll notice that it is the latest from Toyota almost instantly. On the side, the HyRyder stands on 17-inch alloy wheels sitting just under the nicely done square wheel arches. Now the car that you see here is in the blue and black dual tone shade. It is available in as many as 7 monocolor options and 4 dual tone hues. Interesting also is the fact that there is not much character line anywhere on the side body, and thankfully chrome also has been used minimally, so the only chrome that you see on the side profile are under the window line. The windows themselves aren't the largest that we've seen but appear to be generously big. There is a grey roof rail on top, there's a shark fin antenna, and the ORVM in this particular model is in the black, and the turn indicators are integrated here. And because this is the strong hybrid model, you get the hybrid badge just under the side ORVMs. Now very interestingly, if you compare this car to the current segment bestseller, which is the Hyundai Creta, the HyRyder is slightly taller, slightly longer, and slightly wider than the Korean model. As far as wheelbase is concerned though, this car has a slightly shorter wheel space than the Korean model. That same sporty nature of the visual element on the face of this car continues at the rear. That's courtesy massively thanks to the split LED tail light units that you see here. There is a strong chrome garnish on the tail, and you get several logos and branding. So you get the Toyota logo in the middle, there is the Urban Cruiser HyRyder on the left, and if it wasn't already evident from the side, this is the hybrid, so you get that logo as well. But before we get into the cabin highlights and tell you how much space there is on offer, it's very interesting to note that the boot, while promising a whole lot of space, does actually pack in that battery pack, that large battery pack, and therefore you may have to compromise on the boot space. Toyota is providing you with this tray here, which can add to the customization options at your disposal. We have 3 small cabin size bags at our disposal, and we had to be extremely creative to ensure that all of these 3 bags fit in. Eventually, when we couldn't do that, we just simply had to remove the rear tray entirely to ensure that all our bags finally find space. Now step inside the HyRyder, and there are things that it has clearly borrowed from the newer Maruti Suzuki cars. For example, the 9-inch freestanding infotainment screen is something that we've seen on the newer Maruti Suzuki cars. It's bright, it's as vivid as ever, it attracts fingerprints as much as it always has, but it incorporates a whole lot of information while you're on the move. The AV support is obviously here. You get displays for your phone, you get a whole lot of information about your drive. The unique thing, because this is a strong hybrid, is this energy flow display. It tells you if the battery is powering the vehicle or the engine is powering the vehicle, which way the energy is flowing. But we'll focus on that when we get this car on the move. Interestingly, you also get other drive statistics like your average speed, your fuel economy. Currently it shows this figure, but that's because we've kept the air conditioning on full blast and we've been very aggressive in our initial round of flow testing. Toyota claims that the strong hybrid will give you over 27 kilometers to every liter, and in the real world we expect the figure to be close to that figure instead of the figure that you see right here on the screen. Now, in terms of feature list, this car comes fairly loaded. You get wireless phone charging, but in case your phone does not support wireless phone charging, the center console here has a 12-volt charging socket as well as a conventional USB charging point. Now, what you do also get is a very large driver display. It's all digital. I don't see a tachometer here anywhere, but I do see a power, eco and charging mode option. It tells you if the car is running on, again, entirely battery power, entirely engine power, or a combination of the two. So that's a neat feature to have right here where the driver can see. For added safety, of course, this car gets something that you've seen in the latest Baleno and the Vitara Brezza, the head-up display. We've spoken extensively about this head-up display in our reviews of those two cars, so if you've not checked that out, do so. This HUD screen is straight away taken from the Maruti Suzuki cam and put here in the Toyota model. What has also been taken and carried forward from the Maruti Suzuki cam inside the HyRyder is the 360-degree surround view camera. The other highlights of the HyRyder are that it supports Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, and comes with Toyota iConnect technology, which allows you to monitor and control certain functionalities like switching on and off your car, controlling the air conditioning and more remotely using just your smartphone or your smartwatch. Now, there are some features that the Koreans are offering over and above what you get inside the HyRyder, and it's a miss from the Toyota cam. Now, for example, this car has no air purification system, no cooled glove box. So these features are becoming increasingly common and could have further bolstered the feature claim of the Toyota SUV. The dashboard is stretched out wide, has a nice premium feel, layered dashboard pattern has been given, and while the top layer is hard plastic, move down and the grey accent looks premium, and the leatherette insert on the dash looks very upmarket, complete with its contrast stitching. This same leather material now extends all the way to the front two doors and the back two doors as well, so that's a neat feature. The seats themselves on the strong hybrid come in a dual tone black and brown option. If you're opting for the other non-hybrid or mild hybrid option, the interiors are entirely in black. Seats are comfortable. You get front seat ventilation on the seat here, and you can control that through the two buttons given on the center console. There are two more buttons here. One is EV mode, when you want the car to run on entirely electric power when the battery so allows, and the other is the button for selecting the multiple drive modes that this car comes with. Now, nothing remarkably new about the steering wheel. Conventional size, has the mounted controls for a whole lot of features like cruise control to control the AV on the main infotainment screen, and this steering wheel of course can be adjusted for both rake and reach. Now, my personal favorite as far as the feature list inside the HyRyder is concerned is this almost panoramic sunroof that you get. While Toyota says it is panoramic, it is large but doesn't entirely replace the roof. The best part is one touch of the button and the fabric layer, which is the first layer, and it is slightly thin, nonetheless opens up entirely, and then the glass also opens up significantly to let the elements come in, filter in. Now, that is also great news for a cabin that's largely dark in color, and for the rear passengers can be a good visual break. But what do the rear seats have on offer? Let's find out. The rear seats of the HyRyder have several stellar highlights and a few significant misses as well. Let's start with the misses first. The proportion The wide proportion of this car from the outside is quite impressive, but on the inside that doesn't really translate into much for 3 adults sitting right next to each other. Shoulder room to me isn't quite adequate for 3 passengers, and the passenger in the middle is also going to be shortchanged because of the floor hump that you see here, and the central console juts back to eat into the leg space for him or her. This seat is pushed almost to the farthest back possible, and I still have a whole lot of knee room. Leg space is just about adequate, and there is feet space under the front seat, which is moderately generous. Under thigh support is also great, and the headroom is also satisfactory. The rear seat passengers get rear AC vents, which can be controlled for speed flow, and there is one conventional USB point and one Type-C charging point and a storage space just underneath. The other highlight, of course, is that you can pull down the central armrest, which comes with its cup holders, so it can make for a good, comfortable ride. I've already spoken about the massive sunroof that you get, so it's really nice to let the elements play in when the weather allows, and that can be especially good for long journeys. Now, one of the great things about electric vehicles and even hybrid vehicles are just how silent they can be. Push button start, and you're never really sure, if you're new to a hybrid vehicle, if it is actually on. You'll obviously get used to it, but it's only when you put it in the D mode and remove the foot from the brake and you get a move on that you know that this is a really silent hybrid vehicle. Toyota is offering the HyRyder with the strong as well as the mild hybrid version. This is the top end strong hybrid variant. This gets a 1.5 litre petrol motor. This also gets a large battery pack for its hybrid credentials. Now, for somebody who's not very familiar with hybrid vehicle technology, it can get a bit complicated, but to break it down and put it simply, when the car is stationary, obviously everything is off. But once you get a move on gradually, the car tends to start and propels itself in the electric or battery mode. Now, once you reach a moderate level of speed, the engine kicks in and works in tandem with the battery. Again, I repeat, this is assuming that the battery has enough charge. When the engine is working in tandem with the battery, it is also actually charging the battery. So that's great as well. When you want to get a move on, throttle inputs are much stronger. Then is where the engine takes over entirely and the car gets a move on. The HyRyder in its strong hybrid variant offers 115 horsepower in total, and there is 135 Newton meters of torque. Now, if you compare it to some of its Korean and German rivals, those figures may not seem entirely impressive. The HyRyder is a steady, mature vehicle, but perhaps the driving enthusiasts who are used to the turbo petrol motors may find it a little lagging. The engine inside the HyRyder in the strong hybrid variant comes mated to the e-drive transmission unit. Now, on its own, the e-drive transmission works effortlessly. Never did we feel when we were driving within city or mostly on highways that the engine was actually hunting for the numbers. The gear slots were quite effortless and on point. But it is when you want to make an overtaking move that things can get a little bit complicated, because you have to really give the throttle input a nice, real deep kick, and that is when the HyRyder will get the job done. Of course, there are multiple drive modes as well. You get the car in eco mode, EV only mode, and the power mode as well. There is the auto mode, and for terrains that are a little tricky and require more traction, you also have the HyRyder offering the snow mode. Now, while the hybrid credentials of the HyRyder are moderately impressive, look beyond the hybrid technology and there is much to like inside this car. For example, the suspension setup, for example, the steering setup, and for example, the braking. As far as the refinement of the HyRyder is concerned, it is right up there with what you would expect from a mid-size SUV car in this segment. There is hardly any ambient noise, hardly any road noise that seeps in from any of the windows. Engine noise when this car is on the engine only mode is also quite minimal, at least on the inside. Now, somebody who's familiar with the Toyota engineering would once again appreciate the robust build, the robust character of the HyRyder. The braking is on point, the steering feedback at triple digit speeds is good, the car remains nicely planted, very steady, and the suspension, well, is typically Toyota, so the HyRyder has really no problems whatsoever in tackling speed breakers and road aberrations. The HyRyder is an excellent addition to Toyota's product portfolio in the country. But is it an excellent addition to the very lucrative mid-size SUV space? The segment has some very strong players like the Hyundai Creta and the Kia Seltos. On its own, the HyRyder benefits from very sporty looks on the outside, and the strong hybrid engine technology is a good bragging point. Space on the inside is adequate, and the feature list is par for the course. What do you make of the latest HyRyder and this video? Do let us know, and do also check out our full in-depth written review on htauto.com. For now though, that's all the time we have. Thank you for watching.